8 hours, I guess. I don't know. It's not pleasant.
Okay.
And then you start bleeding out your asshole, and then you're done. I mean,
Bleeding out.
so how's it going? We're going to talk about disappearing beaches.
So
today.
we were talking about a really interesting topic with Aldo. You want to bring it up?
Yeah. So I was reading an article on Facebook, and you know how everything on Facebook, you don't know if it's real or not. But there's this article on Facebook that somewhere in Asia or the Middle East, could have been South America, I don't remember, a beach disappeared overnight. So
Overnight. How do you?
well, people say that semis pulled up and they carried all the sand into them and they took them somewhere. I'm guessing to a concrete factory or something.
Or fucking somebody, like a bunch of fucking swimming pools or something.
Really? And
Or-
till this
Yeah.
day, like
Or maybe that's
beach
where
just-
it went to that horse lady.
It maybe did.
There
You
was
never
some
know.
of that 19 tons wound up here in New Mexico.
It could
So
be.
that's industrious.
Can they use the beach sand for concrete, or is it a special type of sand, like desert sand?
Let's back up a
concrete?
minute. So there's different types of sand.
There is different types of sand.
So what did they use that
So-
sand
Who
for?
knows what they use beach sand for? Because to my understanding,
I used it in my bathtub.
you did.
You did. You
A
did.
couple of years ago,
It'd be on.
there was a crisis with sand and how sand was becoming extinct. And you might say, like, why is it coming extinct if like the Sahara
There's so
Desert
much
is full of
sand.
sand? Well, the sand that we use to build and mix with concrete has a different molecular structure. Like the beach sand is round, perfectly round, like little round pebbles.
So it's more like like
And the
little
sand that you
pebbles.
use for concrete is more of like squares and it
Like
has
you-
sharp corners that help the stability
right.
of the mixture.
Oh,
So
well, that
you
makes
know you
sense.
cannot use every sand to build.
Because, the round sand just basically will just crumble apart.
Well,
It's just-
eventually it'll wash off.
yeah.
Like,
Well, it would just roll because if two little circles won't match
well,
each
no,
other.
I mean,
and like,
obviously, like,
I don't know what I'm talking about.
like,
I'm not a concrete
obviously,
factory.
like, if you mix concrete and with sand, you're gonna have a ball of concrete eventually. Like, you can't just mix concrete. Concrete is a component that you add to sand. Sometimes gravel. That's why when you do
Yeah.
sidewalks, they throw in gravel in the mix of concrete because that helps the stability and the structure of concrete.
And it uses less concrete.
So yeah, so if you're using like beach sand with concrete, you could still have an effective result. The thing is like it's gonna wash out over time.
So one day you just became a sand expert and a concrete expert.
It's
Or-
part of the random effect.
It is. I wonder if I used the right stuff with my epoxy mix on my tub.
It doesn't
I
really
hope
matter
so,
because
because it's
you
in
used
an epoxy,
epoxy. And
yeah.
it's
Well,
completely
because
bound
different.
up in the matrix.
Well, you just basically sealed it over.
You use it for texture.
Yeah.
It's just for
Yeah,
texture.
it's not like-
not for structure.
Yeah, I would be worried if this building was made by you with
Sand.
with beach sand and concrete. Now that would be a worry, but not a bathtub.
If I did it, especially.
It's like if you did it, okay, Tom.
Uh-oh.
It's like, well, it does the
That's
job.
better.
Yeah,
It's warm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year. How was your New
Like-
Year, Tom?
Uneventful, which is kind of the way I wanted it. The way I like it.
Yeah.
Restful.
I guess you reach a certain point in life where you
recuperative.
just want it to be uneventful.
Yeah, I mean, I've done enough partying over the last 50-some years.
Shit.
We
Right.
did some partying this New Year. And
Jeez,
I wish I
like
did
at some
not
point,
party.
it's like New Year's just becomes, when you're in your teens and 20s, it's like, man, how late, even when you're a kid, like how late can I stay up? Right? I want to stay up,
Yeah.
not sleep.
What was your first?
And then how much can I drink, or who can I meet at a party and take home or whatever? And then at some point, it's just like, fuck it, I'm going to bed at 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
'Cause you're
I'm
already
just like,
burnt out.
I want to wake up tomorrow and do something interesting and
What? Okay.
sleep off a hangover
I guess I have two questions.
or bleach my brain,
I have two questions for you since you're the most experienced at it here.
Okay.
And you come from a very cool era, which was the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So,
The good 80s.
what was your first, how was your first New Year's party as a I'd say like a legal adult or even like a teenager, like maybe before college. I don't know what age you started drinking.
When I was about 13.
God. Okay, that's. Remember, guys, everything said in this
I
podcast
had a
is for
beard
entertainment purposes.
when I was like, I started shaving in like the 7th grade.
Dude, I'm
So-
28 and I
so-
have not shaved a single day of my life.
I was getting served like 4 years before I was 21.
At a bar.
Sometimes, but I don't. I had a fake ID for a while too. But I would go to the back where I'm from in Pennsylvania. You couldn't buy beer in the grocery store. We had beer distributors. We had like you have like an outlet store.
Okay,
Yeah.
kind of like a liquor
Like a liquor store.
Yeah.
But it was just a distributor of all
Convenience.
alcohol. Like you couldn't buy state stores are where you bought wine and hard liquor. They called them state stores, and then or beer marts or beer outlets or beer distributors is where
Yeah.
you bought beer. And it was just this big warehouse full of fucking cases of beer.
That's why you moved to New Mexico, because New Mexico.
Pretty
You
much
buy liquor
every
everywhere.
other state besides Pennsylvania.
Well, no, I was in Utah.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
was
They
in
don't.
Salt Lake City a couple years ago.
Pretty
and
hard.
They have
I wanted
similar,
to buy
a
a six
similar.
pack. It was a weekend. It was work, but it was a weekend, and it was I guess Saturday night. I just wanted to kind of kick back and have a couple beers. I was gonna drink the whole 6-pack. And we had a gas station like right across the hotel I was staying at, and there was no beer there. So I asked the dude, I'm like, okay, well, what can I do to get beer? And I could be totally wrong, but they said that their liquor stores were state stores, and they have a high tax.
What?
They do.
Yeah.
So did Pennsylvania, for that matter. They taxed the alcohol there. Granted, they had nice highways, so I guess it.
Why?
went into-
Why is it?
Beautiful
Right.
city, dude.
Salt Lake is a really
very
nice.
nice city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some merit to that, I suppose. But I think you probably pay taxes on alcohol here when you buy them at Albertsons or
Yeah,
What?
but it's not that
not as
much.
high. Yeah,
Why is it that they
Why?
don't sell like liquor?
it's an old Pennsylvania is a Commonwealth, which is a different
Okay, makes sense.
countries. There's a couple of commonwealths still left, that exist in this country. So the laws date back. I mean, they're ancient. They predate the Union.
Mm-hmm.
So they have some just weird. There was just some weird law that just sort of got grandfathered in when it was a
Yeah.
state.
Is it still like that?
And,
you know?
it's still, I think, in some cases you can buy alcohol in some establishments. Like they limit the amount. Like I think it's one chain. In other words, like say Whole Foods. One Whole Foods
Which we're not sponsored.
in, I believe it's in a particular region is allowed to sell alcohol,
Okay.
whereas the others can't.
Yeah.
So it'd be true of maybe like back there instead of Albertsons we have what's called Acme Market, which is owned by the same people, believe it or not. So
Is
like
it
one, yeah, exact.
Yeah,
It's
it's like Kroger's and
yeah,
Smith's.
they own.
Oh, okay,
it's owned by the
Kroger's.
same parent
And
company.
King Soopers.
So like if you go to an Acme, it looks exactly like an Albertsons, and you can buy all the same shit, exactly. And in like one of those stores is allowed to sell alcohol, the others
Does it
So-
vary depending on the county? Does
aren't. I think
it all
I forget if it's
county?
regional or if it's like one per county or one per state. I don't. I think there's more than one per state. I think it might have to do with your municipality, like one per county or something
per
like
county.
that is allowed to serve or sell and even serve. They could have like a little pub, like the Whole Foods where I used to work. They built a little pub so you could go in and drink a beer. And
Was that your first job, Whole Foods?
No, my first
No?
job was at an Italian restaurant.
Dude, hell yeah.
As a kid, it was nuts.
Restaurant jobs are really
Well,
difficult.
they really are. I was just a dishwasher and a prep chef,
At the same time?
it was like, yeah, I would
or
I
did
would
you
make
escalate
salads.
from like dishwasher to
Well, they made me
Make
make
the-
salads for like as appetizers for the people before they
Make the
got there.
salads,
I made
Tom.
salads, and then I would wash dishes and then of course every once in a while, like if the cooks got behind, I'd throw the pasta on or whatever.
And then
Yeah.
My
roll it.
first job was at an Italian restaurant too. So
Yeah.
that's-
Great
Your
place.
Italian restaurant does not compare to
Yeah,
Tom's
it's the
Italian.
big chain Italian restaurant. We won't say
No.
no, but technically it is Italian restaurant.
That's true.
But home,
This was a little hole in the wall,
see,
And it
like
was a-
hole in the wall restaurants are always way better.
And it
than
was like a
chain
really
restaurants.
popular
Obviously,
place.
but you're not gonna go get a job. Okay, so you're
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
go
it's gonna-
apply for a job.
It's gonna suck getting
You're
a
gonna
job
go
there,
apply
though.
for a job everywhere, and then you're gonna, if they call you up and they say, "Hey, you're hired," you're gonna be like, "Wait, are you a hole in the wall restaurant?" And they say no, you're gonna say no. Of course not. You don't care about that. You're just gonna go and do the job.
Yeah, I mean, as a high school kid, you're just looking for some extra money. That's all it was.
Exactly.
Well,
And it's character building because, man, my hands were like hamburger at the end of the night.
because the wash dishing part of it
It's rough.
is rough. Because I
You're
mean,
just like they're all like
your
cracked.
hands are
you know?
soaked all day.
Yeah,
You're just
In chemicals.
in chemicals.
Yeah.
Too, but
I'll never forget
Bleach.
that. And we're just like, oh
Bleach
my
is
god,
bad for your
bleach,
skin.
because you'd have to clean the floors with bleach at the end of the night. I mean, the whole place
How
had.
old were you then?
How was I? Maybe 15,
I got
16, 15, 16 years old, something like that.
my first job was at a hotel, but it has 3 bars, and I was the liquor runner. That's what was I? 16. I don't think that's
Not a good thing
really
to have a.
no a
like
16-year-old running liquor all day long.
But
So I got to know a lot about wine and different types of alcohol.
yeah,
at,
like here's
16.
one for you. And
So I
one
was
for me.
I was a
Two for me.
badass.
Two for me, one for
At
you.
17, I was a freaking badass wine master already.
But
Just
this is
kidding, I
how
know
like
nothing about
my friends and I had this job, and they got fired. I had quit because I was just done, working. But my friends got fired from that job because they were doing just that. They were going into the refrigerator and sneaking wine.
cooking wine.
Well, for drinking,
Oh well, of course.
and they got
Italian
caught by the
restaurants
owner,
is
and then they got fired that very night. So that was kind of a funny thing.
You're out of here. Did he
Yeah.
have an accent, Italian accent, the owner?
No, the owner's wife was Italian. She was
Oh, she was the
Italian American.
Mhm.
He was actually Irish.
Hmm.
But
Wow.
yeah,
That's cool.
They're the
That's
Mexicans
so
of Europe.
cool.
Italians are the Mexicans of Europe. It's true.
Yeah.
It's
I,
true.
as a Mexican, can relate a lot with,
Yeah.
with the Irish.
Catholics, right? Even the Irish, for that matter. Well, the Irish, in a way, are too, because think about it: Italians, Irish, and Mexicans. We all have a very similar flag.
Very similar
Very
flag.
similar flag.
Yeah.
Very similar values.
Yep, Catholic
we love our
values.
alcohol.
We like to fight.
We like to fight. We have
We
tequila.
love
They
to
have
fight.
they have whiskey.
They have whiskey, and the Italians have anisette. I don't know.
Something.
Italians
Amaretto.
have
Amaretto.
amaretto. Or
Amaretto.
wine. Wine. Italians, of course, love their wine.
Big wine guys. Well, I think Europe is really big.
Well, Europe in general.
Well,
It's
everyone
just
in
like
general.
French
I guess
wine.
like wine goes to like a social class, like
Yeah.
it's like a status thing. Like you make over $50,000 a year, which is a lot in New Mexico.
You're a wine drinker.
You're a wine
Not
snob.
a beer
You know,
drinker.
not a
anymore.
beer drinker. If you make minimum wage, you're gonna have freaking
Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Pabst Blue Ribbon,
Natural. No.
natural. What is it? What's that one?
Natural light.
Natural
Or National
Bush
Bohemian.
light.
Yeah, Bush Latte.
You've never heard of
Oh,
Natty Boh?
freaking-
Oh, the what?
Natty Boh, National Bohemian.
No.
That was
what
like
is that?
that was like the cheapest beer you could find. Natty Boh.
It must be
Like, cause you're
It was
when you're a kid, you get
Bohemian?
National Bohemian. It was like some like really like no frills near beer kind of stuff. Like you'd be happy to get your hands on when you were a teenager.
It was probably producing some hicks back.
Probably
like,
you
what-
just-
what's that?
It's like
What-
what alcohol? you
What's
know?
that?
It's like moonshine.
Right.
Moonshine. I was about to ask. I was like, "What's moonshine?"
Moonshine?
Yeah,
just,
it's like
yeah,
It's
it's
just
just
fermented.
it's fermented
for-
liquor. Yeah, it's just
fermented
it's
liquor
corn
or
liquor.
fermented
It's corn liquor. I guess you can make it out of other things, but
Yeah.
it's mainly out of corn.
Fruits.
Western
corn.
thing, right?
Yeah,
No,
usually
it's
the
a
southern
Southern
southeastern
thing?
United
Appalachians.
States Appalachians.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So that whatever they were growing, like in terms of a grain or even a fruit,
Yeah.
I mean, you could take the leftovers and basically, in a sense,
Let
ferment
them
that.
sit and rot.
and rot,
Yeah.
and then they become fermented.
Moonshine.
Moonshine, right?
Isn't it
It's
like
mash.
illegal? Like, isn't moonshine?
It was, but
Because
that
it just
was
has
this-
so much
I
alcohol.
think it's still illegal to produce moonshine illegally.
probably because it's
Well,
you know
it's
you're
a part of the
manufacturing
culture. It's
something.
an Appalachian culture.
Because you can
It's-
make it. I mean, you can make it.
Especially during the
from-
Prohibition. I mean, that was huge. That's where it was all made.
You can pretty much
Yeah,
make it at
it's-
home. Like.
Oh yeah,
simply,
yeah. I mean, you
right?
can buy your own equipment now
Oh,
and make
God.
wine and beer.
So guys, if
It's
you're
easy.
watching this, do not make any alcohol.
Do not make alcohol at home because if you mess up, you're gonna poison yourself.
Yeah, it's better
You're
to
gonna
buy it.
die. You're gonna die.
Better to buy it at the store.
It's cheap. It's cheap.
So you get Busch
It's
Latte.
Or the, you know that
Or-
coffee Guinness was really good.
Oh, that-
Guinness is amazing.
Again, Irish.
Especially that. Oh, I know the Irish are really.
God damn. Okay,
They're
we
cool.
were trying to get away.
I actually am more fascinated by the Scots.
Okay.
Scottish culture is
Yeah.
amazing. They're
We got
really
really
cool.
I'm
good
not a
whiskey.
big fan of the kilts.
I am.
They're
They're like the Native Americans. Of,
You just let your balls hang loose.
No,
I'm
it's
sure
like
they
your
have
dancing is just like slapping and clapping around, dude. Like,
but they're wild men. I mean,
No.
they're really interesting.
What is that? The instrument they play,
Bagpipes.
bagpipes.
Yes.
That is a talent itself because they're like squeezing the pipe over here, like getting air in and out while they're doing like the notes.
They
and,
sound
They
fantastic.
do. They're
Yeah.
cool. They're haunting,
Yeah,
especially
they
when
are.
you're on a lot of Guinness.
Yeah, they're good for funeral service.
and they're not good for funeral service, but they
Yeah,
are
the
used
Scots are
for,
interesting. They
for
really are.
funeral service. Like they're great. They're amazing. I've tried them.
Speaking of like state-owned liquor stores and stuff like that, we can kind of like that's kind of like the whole idea of Colorado with their dispensary
Mhm.
stores.
Okay, yeah.
Are they state stores for cannabis in Colorado?
I would think more or less that's what you've got.
Because the
Something like
proposal
that.
here,
And
in
that's what they're
Mexico
gonna do
is
here,
that
yeah,
they're
same thing.
state stores,
State
right?
stores, kind of like what we had in Pennsylvania. If you
With
wanted to buy
liquor.
wine and liquor, you have to go to a state store. It's a state-run liquor store.
Okay, okay.
I mean, those
Beer
are baby,
distributors too.
those are
Right.
baby steps to something we should have adopted like I don't know, a decade ago.
For sure, but
Two decades
everything
ago.
in New Mexico is about 30 to 40, maybe 50, 60, 70 to 100 years behind everybody else.
New Mexico?
Well,
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
we're
We're way behind.
legalizing weed.
true.
Well, it's legal now. I mean, we're opening
But it's-
dispensaries in April, starting April. So that's like what 3
It's
months.
fairly
from now.
progressive,
months
but
away.
a lot of other states have beat us to it, neighboring states.
Yeah, a lot of them have beat us to it, but then there's a lot of them like they're gonna.
That
never
it's
do
gonna
it. I
take
mean,
years.
But it
to
just, New
do.
Mexico,
Like, let's be honest,
let's-
Utah's not gonna do it.
they won't know because
Well, I'd probably think Utah would do it before Texas, and I mean nothing against Texas, but
they're a little too conservative at this point.
way
yeah.
too conservative.
I mean, New Mexico is cool because it's always kind of done its own thing. It's a young state, right? It's one of the newest
Yeah.
states,
Some of the-
1912, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's an incredibly young state, and so I think it's still, in a sense, trying to establish itself in comparison to some of the older states that have been around and have established their ways.
Yeah.
And you know culturally, it's like a tricultural dynamic that's sorting itself out still too.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's here, and so it's it has it's like it beats to its own drum, and so in some ways, yeah, this is kind of cool because it's being very progressive by establishing legalized marijuana.
Yeah. We're
But in other ways, it's just kind of behind the eight ball. in a
I
lot of
have a
ways.
feeling we're gonna go pretty conservative here.
Yeah, it'll be state run.
In a few years, like next elections, we can possibly go a whole different route than what we are right now
We never
into
know.
a more conservative kind of government run thing.
Mhm.
Like I don't want to get into politics. Can they remove the whole like legal issue like with marijuana?
I think
like
they can.
like let's say it's legal now because we are Democrat, right? And the majority is Democrat, but I have a feeling that's potentially going to end pretty soon. Can they undo things like the marijuana?
The legalization. They
I
can-
suppose they could if they
could.
voted upon it. But the thing is, the funny thing about that is I find Republicans are for less government than Democrats. So they're more likely to just leave it alone.
Okay.
'Cause
I mean,
go-
not that,
by-
not that
by-
I care about
by definition,
consuming it or not. It's just the fact that
Republicans
it would be very
are-
beneficial.
It's going to be very beneficial to the state because the taxation on
Yeah,
marijuana is
it would be
pretty
foolish.
high.
It would be foolish to
revert it.
reverse something that could potentially have an economic impact. And this state
It
needs
is-
money.
It's
God
an
knows
economic,
it needs. It can't afford to be throwing things away
Yeah.
like that. I mean, if it's the revenue it's going to generate in taxes is going to be enormous for the state,
Yeah.
which is
yeah, and
great.
it's
I
gonna
mean,
help
look
the
at
state.
Colorado.
Yeah, look what it's done for them. It's going to do that for
Colorado's-
this state as well.
Colorado's
Often.
like Colorado, like really boosted itself.
And they were
on
not
that.
poor to begin with.
No,
No, it
This
was,
state,
it's-
on the
it's
other
the same.
hand, it's one of the poorer states, so we can use that extra.
What are
money.
we like? Number 4, 3?
In the poorest?
Yeah,
I don't know
'Cause
in particular in terms of the
Yeah.
number, but it's not,
We're
not
ranked
because I
pretty
think
high up
Maine
there.
wasn't
It's not.
Main like
It's
the
the poorest.
poorest.
that and some of the southeastern
But then again,
states,
it's the small
deep south.
states. It's
Yeah,
the small
and we're
states.
not
I mean,
a small
with
state.
lot-
we
they
have,
don't have a lot of
we have
land.
a huge,
It's a
we have
huge state,
huge,
but not a lot of
piece land,
populace.
but what our population in New Mexico barely nears 2.5 million.
Yeah,
people.
to around 2.5.
When you have a state in Florida, like a
Well,
state
look
like
at-
Florida with like 26 million
Yeah.
people. I mean,
Yeah.
Or California.
You
So
know,
they
that's
get
half
the
the size
same-
of.
They have more
Yeah,
representation.
exactly. So
And
That's-
generally, also, what else do we
New York.
do? What do we produce? What do states produce?
We
So
don't
New
produce
Mexico
anything,
produces
don't we?
food.
well,
Some
we
food.
produced oil for
there's-
a while, but
and
then
oil
that's
and
for a
gas.
while.
There's oil, natural gas,
There's tourism.
tourism.
There's a lot of culture in tourism.
Tourism's
very-
pretty big.
Especially here in
The entertainment industry's brought a lot of money, so that was smart on Richardson's part to bring that to New Mexico.
Yeah,
That really helped.
Yeah, a lot of movies being produced.
Yeah. Tamale.
That's true.
That really helped.
that's true. There's a lot of
I mean, we have
movie production.
studios.
And now,
Isn't Netflix like in Albuquerque? too?
yeah, they've got.
There's Netflix.
They're renting, or rather, they've occupied Albuquerque studios
Yeah.
or Sandy or wherever it's.
The
over by-
I-25. What's the one?
No, that's
in
a-
front of
I-25
the.
studios.
That's used, but that's not the one they're in. They're
Also,
in.
they're
that's
not
a
in
porn
there?
studio. That's a porn studio.
Oh, that's sick.
Maybe.
I don't know.
No, the one they're at is over by Tingley Coliseum,
Oh yeah, yeah.
up in
yeah,
that
yeah,
area.
yeah.
It's new, and I think.
And then I
Netflix
mean
is-
we're kind of advancing.
And
In
then
the movie
one
industry.
state that took a
Yes.
huge leap was Oregon,
Oh,
legalizing everything.
legalizing
did they? Did
almost everything,
Yeah.
right?
what was it?
And then there's a
Like,
threshold for like serious drugs like heroin and stuff, but
Mhm.
like it's pretty fascinating how they
what did
legalized
they legalize
psychedelics.
exactly?
In
Like,
particular, I think it was Portland, just
Portland?
basically said everything's legal, like fentanyl,
They
heroin.
fe-
We
oh,
don't give a fuck what you do.
God.
We're not going to prosecute.
Uh-huh.
Now,
With the sales of
yeah,
certain drugs, it's going into use for the service, the centers where they help.
for
Addicts,
treatments,
right? For
yeah,
treatment
I would
centers.
think that would be a good idea. But
So
I
it's
know,
cre-
like in
it's a
particular,
cycle.
they
They're
started
creating
with
a cycle.
psychedelics because psychedelic assisted therapy is something on the horizon. So they're
Okay.
kind of ahead of the game, which is good, by creating a safe space for people to start using and for treatments, for treating
Yeah.
people with psychedelic medicines, like psilocybin in particular was the one.
I know you're huge on psychedelics.
Mm.
Police podcast. This is for entertainment purposes only. So now, with that being said, we're going to have Tom illustrate us a little bit on psychedelics.
Yes. and
Sounds a little bit.
First of all, don't use them, but
good point.
unless under the supervision of a qualified medical practitioner who's licensed to do so.
Okay.
That being said, and there are places where you can do that. So that, I guess that's kind of the point, is there are places cropping up now. Psychedelics obviously have been around for millennia, right? So every culture has a ritual use of a particular mind-altering substance. And you could even include like fermented beverages as part of that, like alcohol, even tobacco. It's all in some sense or another psychedelic, which just means mind manifesting.
Mind manifesting.
So
That's what psychedelics.
it's what it literally means, yeah.
Okay.
And so anything that alters your state of consciousness could be theoretically considered psychedelic, right?
Mhm.
From your normal consensus waking reality consciousness. And so all cultures have some sort of ritual use of some sort of mind-altering substance.
Yeah.
Among which, obviously the classics, what we call classical psychedelics, would be like psilocybin, peyote, San Pedro
Peyote.
cactus, and LSD, things like that, even marijuana. and so throughout the ages, they've been used ritually to enhance or to embellish creativity, problem solving,
Connect to the one
connectedness. Yeah, like spiritual. There's a spiritual component, but also it's social, it's cultural. Like when you really look at what's been written, what happened in the 60s aside, the counterculture use, which I think has given it a bad reputation, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. We're finding now, we obviously know about, indigenous cultures like the Oaxacan Mexicans that were doing psilocybin, Maria Sabina. That's well documented, their use of psilocybin. And in northern Mexico, the use of peyote,
DMT.
and then now the sapo or toad medicine, and in Central and South America, San Pedro, which is similar to peyote, and ayahuasca.
Oh, that's
which
true.
is basically DMT. That's
Ayahuasca.
DMT. It's pure, just an orally active DMT.
What do you mean
And
by
so-
orally active?
Well, DMT, in and of itself, is not orally active. In other words, it's not something that if you took orally, you would actually have an experience. It has to be vaporized, which is why people smoke DMT. When you hear about people smoking it, they're vaporizing it. Because the brain or the body produces something called monoamine oxidase, which will oxidize that tryptamine molecule so that it doesn't linger in the bloodstream for too long. So in order to have this experience, you have to get your blood levels up and sustain them for a period of time in order to have this experience. And so you need something that allows that to happen. And in the case of ayahuasca, which is kind of brilliant, it's two components. One is the DMT containing plant, and the other, I believe, is a vine that contains a monoamine oxidase inhibitor.
Okay.
How they knew this is anybody's, probably aliens.
Aliens.
And we'll get
How
to that.
did they? Yeah, that's true. How did they know?
Because of
that
all
the
the species
consumption
of
that-
plants in the Amazon, right? Like, how the fuck did they know to
That
put these
was
two
why I
together?
Take without dying and how to take it.
And
Well,
why-
I think there was a
and then how
lot
to
of deaths
prepare.
too, because there must have been so many deaths.
well, no doubt, like with mushrooms
Like
too.
with mushrooms, there had to be so many.
Some
deaths.
people ate them and died.
And be
Some
like,
people ate
okay.
them and felt, wow, this is a good source of protein.
Like they start.
And then some were like, holy shit, I saw God. And like, okay,
some
well, we'll
people-
reserve these for this. We'll eat these and we'll stay away from those.
And
You know,
those-
so-
yeah, but there had to be so many people dying because
Yeah.
there's a lot of mushrooms.
Or very
There's, like,
sick. I
How
mean,
many different
well,
types
death
of
caps
mushrooms
will
are
kill you. I mean, there's a lot. And the ones that will kill you. I mean, the ones that are poisonous will kill you.
there?
hands
okay,
down.
so there's no like.
There's no antidote.
There's no
There's
like.
no like this won't get
Nowadays-
gray
gray
area where you like eat one, you get really sick.
Even a
but then
bite
you
of a
survive.
death cap, like one little bite, will kill you.
It will,
So-
doesn't it stop your heart?
I believe it affects
Well, I
the
mean,
liver.
you
like
would
that.
die.
Like it
Obviously.
generates like
It
a-
destroys the liver.
Okay, but like how long
And
does it take for it to kill
it's
you?
probably, it could be an agonizing 8 hours, I guess. I don't know. It's not
God,
pleasant.
Okay.
And then you start bleeding out your asshole and then you're done. I mean,
Bleeding out
So-
your asshole. Okay.
so those typically,
Dude, I
they
can't
decided to
imagine
stay
that.
away
That's
from
so
those,
bad.
but the ones that make you see God, we'll reserve those for special occasions. Hence psilocybin. And then the other ones that you eat and you feel good, like it fills me up and I feel energetic, those are your edible species or varieties that give you
Do you
protein.
think they like chose people to test them out? They're like, okay, you've
That's a
done
good
that
question.
person.
I'm
Yeah.
sure there
Like,
probably
hey,
was.
like you've done some bad stuff, this and that. You're gonna take the
No,
freaking
here-
mushroom roulette.
Or
Not this
maybe-
ain't no
Or
religion.
maybe a volunteer program for a couple, like, handful of beans or whatever, like, they
Yeah.
used to eat back
I was
then.
like, give me a.
Because it's like, nowadays you could be a test subject for a new drug, for a new
Yeah.
medication, or
Sure,
whatever.
though,
it
back
may
then,
be
though,
for
there
a
was-
small
That's true.
compensation.
There were fewer people, and I'm sure that they didn't. I mean, communities,
'cause
they
that
needed
would
each other.
destroy your
They needed
population.
to cooperate to survive. You couldn't lose people, and
No.
get beyond that loss as easily as like when your planet's overpopulated like it is now. But I think it's just that people discovered through trial and error, possibly, that these are the ones you eat. These are the ones you don't.
Ancestors too. I mean,
Right.
they took a lot of.
And then they
years.
taught their kids, eat these. Don't eat those. These are for God. These are for food.
For me, kind of like I like to think that the first person who tried a psychedelic
They
knew
trip of their life.
No, they knew like something greater, the greater force.
Oh, absolutely.
The universe somehow manifested and told this person, "Hey, consume this." Like, you can't just.
Do you think it called him?
It had to, because look at it this way: you can't just be a random person, and you don't know tripping exists, right? You don't know that an experience of a psychedelic exists,
right?
Okay. Correct.
Correct.
So you can't go on a hunt to look for this
because you don't know what you're looking for.
Because you don't know what this is.
More than likely, it was a random.
So it could have been a journey, some type of distress, or spiritual calling. Because let's keep in mind that these tribes had always an elder, that or shaman, that were connected to something greater than their physical body. So this person had to have been on a journey, and something called him and said, "Hey, this plant is medicinal. This plant is it's spiritual,
entheogenic."
right?
Well, there's a theory out there, and there's actually quite a number of them around psilocybin, so you're on the right track. There's one theory called the stoned ape theory, and that is the stoned ape, and that is that prior to becoming advanced human beings as we are, that Neanderthals or primitive man, woman, whomever, stumbled upon psilocybin and had this experience from this, which changed their brain, because it does affect the brain.
Yeah.
Changes the way you think and rewires the brain. And it started to develop, we started to develop capacity for speech. We developed language, tool making, fire. That's when we started developing more human-like traits because of these psychedelic compounds that we were stumbling across, and the more that we use them, and then our offspring, and it just we evolved, and it caused an evolutionary shift in human beings. That's called the stoned ape theory. The others, something a little more contemporary, although it's still ancient in comparatively speaking, but it's just there was a book written by somebody, a couple of books on religion, in a sense that psilocybin mushroom was Jesus.
Okay.
And so like the early Christians were a mushroom cult. And that the mushrooms were a gateway to spirituality, and that they started worshiping them, and that somehow or another it became personified in the form of Jesus Christ. But I don't know, that was never really proven to the point where it was, it's irrefutable. But there's a lot of it's an interesting, interesting idea that, or at the very least, it might have played a role in the development of some of the early religions, like the Christian religions, specifically Christianity. Any religion. Well, all of them have some sort of, again, they have a ritual psychedelic compound that's used as part of their foundational piece. It's a tenet. It's part of their.
And it makes sense, because almost every experience
it's religious.
People
share
spiritual with psychedelics is spiritual.
It's divine.
It's religious. It's divine, and some see the same. They have the same visions.
That's true.
In other places in Europe, they found the Greeks had a sect called the Eleusinian Mysteries. It was a kind of an underground spiritual society, secret society, that they would gather, in particular part of Greece, where they would gather together and have ceremonies and drink something called kykeon, which was this ritual. It was a mix that would allow them a transcendent experience. And so people were always speculating, well, what the fuck is this stuff? So recently, some researcher discovered some artifacts from that era and had they were contained kykeon like containers of like goblets or chalices, and they scraped the residue off of them and analyzed them. And sure enough, recently they proved that the one of the ingredients was ergot, which is a precursor to LSD.
Wow.
Oh.
So these people were
Crap.
basically using like an ancient LSD formula to have these experiences. So
Yeah.
it was part of their mystery school, and Socrates was a member of their
Wow.
group. You know, people like that.
It makes you wonder because there was very wise people.
There was
Yeah, so they were all
really
tripping
smart
balls on
people.
basically ancient LSD.
Wow.
Ancient LSD.
So it's ergot, you know, which is that's lysergic acid
Yeah.
or lysergic acid amide. You just need to add another ethyl group, and it becomes diethylamide,
And it's interesting, like
or
how
two
did they
ethyl groups.
how did they found this? How did they find this? How did they?
Found it.
That is really the
Wow, they founded the whole procedure.
this is
of
something again that
ritual.
was developed over the course of millennia of just trial and error, or did somebody say, hey,
Consume this.
combine
buddy?
these two, like Alaska question, getting back to that, it's amazing because these two plants, when mixed together, create a sustainable experience, an orally active DMT experience that lasts about 4 to 6 hours.
Limitless,
4
you know,
to
like,
6 hours.
Take
in
this
ayahuasca
pill. You'll
experience.
Yeah.
find the secrets to life. You'll develop superpowers, super
Yeah.
knowledge, super.
I mean, it really is, the whole limitless thing was based on psychedelics too.
Yeah.
The author of the book, Alan Glynn, the book was called The Dark Fields. When he was doing research for his book, he was doing research into the use of psychedelics. Early on, prior to the counterculture, you had some of the more influential members of high society using these, kind of like the Greeks were in the Eleusinian Mysteries, using it as kind of a gateway to enlightenment. And so, like early on, they were using LSD for that, and mescaline and psilocybin and things like that. Aldous Huxley wrote Doors of Perception after a mescaline experience. And so this idea of psychedelics being mind manifesting, but also to the point of increasing one's awareness, intelligence, enlightenment, is something that inspired Alan Glynn to write that book, which became Limitless. So in the book, it was MDT. He just rearranged DMT
DMT.
to
Oh,
MDT.
Okay. Is there any way?
And it became NZT in the movie, which is
Why?
completely different.
Why didn't they rearrange it though in the book?
Well, he
Probably like
didn't want to
legal
say DMT.
purposes.
He just didn't want a direct reference to DMT because
Yeah.
he wanted
Having
this
that
drug to
little-
have a unique property. And it's a totally fictitious drug, of course, but it'd be more like microdosing a psychedelic would be the closest approximation to that,
Mhm.
to the effects of that drug.
That makes sense. I mean, if it's stimulating
Yeah,
and it can focus you.
but so he just took DMT and arranged it to MDT. And then in the movie, they totally changed it to NZT, so it really throws it off.
Do you believe like through psychedelics you're like able to, I guess, travel to a different type of dimension?
That's the funny thing, like when you're taking heroic doses of these things that you're experiencing, well, what is it? Are you...
Yeah, because where does it come from?
Right, what are we experiencing? And I guess that is the question. That's what they're trying to find out now. Are we accessing other dimensions? A lot of people are suggesting yes.
So
like this, or just a larger, not necessarily another dimension, but just a larger, or seeing more of, in some cases, seeing more of this one. In other words, this consensus reality is constrained through the default mode network so that we can navigate this. We can differentiate texture, color, right? We can hear, we can see things to avoid, like oncoming, like a car. You want to walk out in front of a car and get hit. So,
Or just jump off a stair.
right? You want to be able to. We need to navigate this reality so that we don't fucking die.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
We
true.
need all our senses, and so it's constrained to the point where we can exist.
So,
But there's more to this reality than what we see.
Yeah.
There is. The visible light
There is a
spectrum,
lot
electromagnetic spectrum, the visible light's about this little sliver here, and whereas the electromagnetic spectrum's huge.
yeah.
And so, like, when you're on a psychedelic, you're basically seeing more. Now, when you're on something like DMT, they're suggesting you're seeing a totally different reality.
So
It's
you're
not-
jumping
you're not-
from a
Yeah,
different.
you're not seeing more of this one. Rather, it's your
You're seeing a different
brain,
one.
your T columns, which is your world builder, your brain,
Okay.
are manufacturing for you an orthogonal reality, which exists, which you could call an alternate reality or alternate dimension. It
Alternate
exists,
reality.
coincides nearby this one, and we're just accessing that through this. And that is a prevailing theory. Like, so it isn't.
Yeah.
In some cases, you're seeing more of this one. So in other words, the hallucinations you see on LSD and psilocybin aren't hallucinations. You're just seeing more. You're seeing more of it's there.
Yeah.
That shit's there. We just don't normally see it.
It's there. You're just
That's
opening
why.
a part of your brain,
It's
That's
allowing you to see
giving
more.
you the power
To see more.
to see more in that same.
Or in
that
some
reality.
cases, to see an entirely new one.
Isn't there a movie
Is it like
called
just
They're
why-
There?
beyond the reality?
What was it called? The one where he puts on the
Oh,
glasses?
They Live.
They Live.
They
yes.
Live.
Yeah, where they were aliens disguised as humans, and you had to put on the filters to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aliens disguise. Okay, wait. So you had to put the glasses on.
Yeah,
see
there were
the
these
alien?
would filter out. You could tell who's human and who wasn't, and there was all this subliminal
Oh, okay.
messaging, and you could see what, what they were really trying to tell you, like to be a
Yeah.
good consumer or to obey and,
So
and
maybe
don't think. And so
A
that was a little.
psychedelic can be the glasses. to
It is.
that.
That's exactly, and it's a metaphor for waking up.
Yeah.
And that's what that was. It's
Yeah.
just really a metaphor. And so these things, again, ritually have been used for those purposes of
To
enlightenment,
wake up.
or
To
just at least to maintain or
Free
sustain.
yourself from your enslavement, really.
Right, it is human slave, which is to say your ego,
Mhm.
It's what it is.
to live more universally and collectively and cooperatively, and it's something that was destroyed, and that is actually, I think, the source of racism. Is that because
Yeah.
when the Judeo-Christian religions developed to the point where you had a matriarchy, right? You had these male, specifically like the Catholic Church, for instance, you had a pope, right? And they wanted to be the sole conduit to God. You had to go through the priests or go through the pope.
Yeah. But
They're the closest to God.
way
Like, you
to-
aren't. So we're so many levels removed from that we need them. And so that's sort of where the brainwashing occurred. But when you have ritually or cultures that believe, you know what, no, we all have our own access, and we actually have a substance that will assist with that. Guess what happened to them? They all got wiped out by the Europeans, who were
Why
Catholics.
is that?
So you look at what happened.
For control.
I'm talking about all indigenous people: Africans, Native Americans, indigenous Latin Americans, you name it, New Zealand, Australia, all over the planet. When the Spanish came to Mexico and these guys were dropping shrooms, they're like, you ain't gonna be doing that anymore.
Exactly. That's one thing that
You're gonna
when the
Stop
Spanish
that.
came to Mexico, a lot of that culture, the real Mexican indigenous culture, was deleted.
completely deleted.
They believed in different gods. They would consume a lot of psychedelics.
Yeah, I mean,
They would consume psychedelics, and in their trips in psychedelics, they would see their gods.
and in all
there's
fairness, too,
a-
they weren't prepared to see God the way the indigenous did, and I think they didn't realize what they were giving these people was going to freak them the fuck
Then
out.
Yeah.
the counter side's debatable because they were sacrificing people to the sun.
Exactly.
So
Well, that's true.
at this point, the Spaniards were like,
Like,
"Hold the
hold-
fuck! What are you doing? That's the
What
sun.
are you doing?
What are
Yeah,
you doing?
that's the
No,
sun.
no, put that child down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I
Well, you never
understand it
know.
was definitely, they were worlds apart, and I think when these monks, when the conquistadors came, and specifically the friars, when they were dealing with the indigenous, it was just like, wait a minute, you can't be doing this. And
Yeah.
also when they did try the substances, and they did in earnest figure out, what's this all about? They were terrified because they had never had an experience like that, and so immediately thought these people were fucking evil.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We gotta
what are
destroy
you
them.
doing? Yeah.
You convert, or we're gonna fucking burn you down. And that's
Which
what they
is
did.
not better than sacrificing virgins to the sun.
No, I know. I mean, they didn't help themselves by having.
But they wouldn't
these,
like in the sacrifices. They wouldn't just be like, "Hey, we're gonna sacrifice you." People would volunteer to be sacrificed.
Well, yeah,
to
they
the
were.
sun.
They're not even sacrificed, offered.
They,
Because
yeah,
they
would
feel
offer.
like. But I guess.
What was
Yeah,
that?
you
But
don't
then
know.
we go back to the indigenous side. You're being sacrificed. You're being offered
Yeah,
to your God because you personally know that there's more to your physical body.
correct.
Right.
Oh,
You're
okay.
at that point. I guess
So this
you're
is
ready
true.
to transcend.
And before we judge those people, our leaders,
Maybe it was a
our leaders
metaphor,
send
like-
young men and women off all the time to die in combat for big money, which is no fucking different.
Exactly.
That is true.
It's not
That is
different.
very true.
We just disguise it.
It's disguised as
in-
patriotism. They might as well just take him, just open up a machine gun. I mean, if you're going to wind up blowing up on a battlefield, how much different is that than
Yeah.
for the big money,
That's very
right?
true.
For oil interest or
Well,
whatever.
at least you had a purpose on the other side, right? You're being offered to your God.
Well, in this case, you're
For-
doing it for your country. You're doing it maybe for God, because you're
You're
fighting evil.
liberating
You're
your
fighting evil
quote-unquote
Muslims
prison.
or whatever. I'm going to go die for my country and for my God. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I agree. We don't want to judge those people too harshly because
Maybe.
at the very least they're no worse.
No,
No,
they
you're right.
maybe they
And
were.
if anything, a little better because their intentions were pure.
Yeah, because they would
They
get.
were soulful.
I think they would get
Well,
like
at
a
least
calling.
they really believed. Well, then again, there were probably corrupt politicians and people back then too, offering up
Well, that didn't happen until
You
the
know,
Spanish
dissidents. Who knows?
Because the indigenous.
No, they fought
Well,
each
that's
other.
true. They had
The
each other.
Aztecs,
did.
the Aztecs
had
fucked
each other
everybody up
over.
around them.
Yeah.
They did. They fucked the Mayans up. I mean, they fucked up everybody. The Aztecs were the bloodiest,
Yeah.
most
That's
brutal.
true. What it is the Aztecs the ones that they would like cut
The heart.
a little piece like of skin. They would put a stick in there and then just like drop from a pole with the rope and like start spinning until the person died. It was like a
form of
sacrifice.
torture. Yeah.
No, and they would volunteer to do that.
Yeah, it was like
It's like they would lay the guy like on a bed of rock, cut right here, and then they would wedge a stick in here, and then they would
some
clamp
indigenous
like a
tribes-
little like some type of rope or something,
and you'd hang from
and they
the
would
skin.
just hang and then spin around a
Was
pole.
it skin or was
Yeah,
it
they-
their
they-
sternum?
I don't know if
That's-
it's like their sternum or
They would
skin.
put it through the skin and you'd hang, and it was actually, in some cases, a rite of passage. I mean, it was a form of torture, but it was also something that you would do in some cases. As
Kind of
a,
like getting jumped in the initiation of a game.
totally, it's hazing.
Yeah,
It was like it was
exactly.
hazing.
So like
but it was
get
for-
beat up before you go in the game. Yeah.
It was a total. It was character building to see if you had what it took to be a warrior or whatever.
Yeah,
you could
and
also
it-
kill somebody.
No,
The
and then
human race, we've been savages.
We all have
and,
been.
like they would get the person off. Imagine having a hole here, and like they'll take the stick out, and you're like, you're bad.
And you'd have these
you didn't
scars,
die.
and you'd walk around like it was like pride or whatever. Like
Yeah.
a tattoo or something. But
Well, that's another thing. Big. They were big on tattoos. Like indigenous Mexican culture was like, what was it?
Well, not necessarily tattoos,
Not-
but like scarring.
Scarring. Well, it's a tattoo.
Well,
With
technically,
scars.
that's what
Like
a
they would
tattoo is,
scar their
scars.
skin into
yeah,
a shape and a form for like body decoration.
hmm
That's pretty cool. Like, I mean, it's not cool like the method they did it with, but it's really unique what they did. It's
It
like,
wasn't
hey,
necessarily body decoration either. Like it was
it was like tribe, like
it was like medals, kind of like you get a new scar for in honor
If you-
of
yeah,
this,
like you
or
killed a jaguar. in the
or
jungle,
you
let's get it.
ranked higher in the tribe, and now you have different scars.
it was ranking.
And then
Essentially.
they had the big ass those big earrings. What are they called? like
Did
ages.
Aztecs have
Aztecs
those?
had them, right? It's from
They had
that
the big
movie
earrings.
from
Apocalypto?
Apocalypto. Have you seen that movie?
Apocalypto. Yeah,
Yeah, that movie's insane.
yeah. Yeah, it was
that
pretty good.
it gives you like
But again,
view
how
of
would
what
we
the hell
know
is going on.
exactly that's how it was? Like,
That's true.
True.
'cause
I mean, we
I
really
mean,
that's
everything,
very, very,
everything
very
at this
true.
point,
it's
everything
speculation.
when we're talking, it's all hypothetical. Like,
Yeah.
Well, it's
And we're basing this, of course,
it's
on
things that
our
like
knowledge of ourselves as modern human beings.
like we know
I
like
think it's
who
common
knows?
behavior.
no
we
that's
have.
Right.
no it we know what's going on because the chain of generations. It's like, let's say you lived in that generation, so you're gonna tell your future generation, tell them about it. Like, hey, well, my grandparents used to do this, and like that. It's just like a little passive generation. Like they would. It's like history. This is like telling
Well,
the
yeah,
story
again,
over
but
and over.
everything
But
in
then
history
again,
is hypothetical because
you
you
get
can't really
manipulated.
rely on that one person. Because what if like, per se, like a group of Aztecs rebelled against the Aztec Empire, and they fucking killed everyone, and they rearranged everything how they wanted it, and then they told their following generation, hey, this is how we do it, and then they communicated down the line, and this is how we do it, but then they forgot, they missed out one part. Now that one part's missing
It's
down the lane,
forever.
and
Yeah.
it's like
No, and
the
then
broken phone theory.
yeah,
But then again, like,
that's true.
what if like it was before, like it was way different before those,
I don't doubt that's happened
It's-
because
I
there's a
don't-
lot of lost.
and it's
Knowledge.
just
There's
manipulation.
Of course, it's not going to be accurate
History,
because
this is an old saying, history is the story of heroes.
exactly.
So in other words, the victors.
Oh, exactly.
Whoever wins gets to write the history books.
Exactly. If you don't win, you're not.
So,
gonna write history book.
What we're reading, what we know, history was written by the victors.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, that is it in a
Yeah,
nutshell.
no, and then-
If there's lost history, I'm sure there's a ton of it.
Yeah,
ton
and
of
like
it.
you said,
They don't share the
there's the
gruesome parts of it.
Or the more interesting stuff too, like aliens.
yeah, like you said the
Next
phone
topic.
theory.
Next topic.
Like you said the phone theory, because you tell someone like your version of a story, they're gonna be like, oh, okay. They're gonna tell their version of what they
Of your
heard
story, yeah.
of your story.
Exactly.
Imagine that in decades.
Well,
like,
that's
not
what,
even
that's
decades,
the
like
Bible
hundreds
too.
and
That's
hundreds
how
and
the
hundreds
Bible
of
was
years.
written.
So
That's exactly how the Bible was written too.
exactly. So
There was somebody
is the
told
truth?
somebody who told somebody, and then eventually
it told another buddy.
that eventually came to one of these gospels according to that person wrote down what they had heard from somebody who heard that from somebody who heard that from who knew Jesus, who was there.
Yeah.
And so we're talking several people removed from the actual event is what we know as the Old Testament and New Testament. Specifically the New Testament. It's
And if it's on a book, it must be true. Kind of like the same idea of if it's on the internet, it must be true.
well, yeah, it's the
not
new
always
religion
true.
is
It's-
the internet.
the internet is the new history books, man.
Well, this just goes to show you how impressionable people are, right?
Oh, and easily manipulated.
Just want to
Yeah.
confirm. It's confirmation, but we just want to hear things that confirm our pre-existing belief structure because it's easier. It's hard to be sustainably unbiased, right?
Yeah.
To be completely open and to just not know and to not have your mind made up about something.
Takes work.
And to just say, I just don't know, I'm not sure. That's hard. It's difficult to sustain that. At some point, you gotta fuck it. I guess I'll just go with this.
Yeah.
And then after a while, this becomes your rut, and then all you want to do is reinforce this because it's hard. And when the deeper the rut gets, the harder it is to climb out of it. If say I was wrong, shit, I gotta go climb out of this and
that
create
happens
a new
lot.
one.
That happens a lot.
It's hard, but that's the importance of critical thinking.
Which we covered last
Yeah,
podcast.
we don't
Critical
do.
thinking.
As a
You guys
species very well,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we're in the straits we are. I think it's
Definitely.
All right, guys.
Right. Well, that was today's episode. Don't forget to go follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Listen to us on Spotify, and we'll catch you back the next time.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.